This water will be added to the water we've gathered and saved for 40 years and more now, filtered and cleaned and boiled, and then used in our child dedications, welcoming new life into the community. Immediately following the service, we're going to pour some of this water out to nourish the meditation garden just around the corner, and Fred Cole's going to lead a blessing in 4 directions, spilling the water as a symbol of our commitment to respecting the earth and creating peace. Anyone who wants to, join him. They'll be at the back door right there after the closing at the end of the service. We opened this morning declaring that the space is made holy by your presence, made holy by your intention, giving meaning, given a weight that can't be measured. That's a blessing. And so together we'll bless the waters. I'll begin. If you'll respond, this water is sacred. This water is made sacred by the many hands that have poured it with intention and love, the many stories that each drop contains, the lives surrounding it, connected by commitment and faith. This water is sacred. May it continue to flow through this community, shining with the reflections of the unique gifts that flow through each of us. May it continue to nurture this community with sustaining hope that we journey together through ripples of growth and change. May it continue to bless us with loving reminders of our collective responsibility to one another and to the world. May its ripples be a reminder that the changes and growth within this community bring movement and transformation inside each of us and in the world beyond our doors. May its purity offer grace to our community, the willingness to forgive ourselves and one another when we make mistakes. And in moments when the reservoirs of heart and spirit are drained by sorrow or pain, may it nourish them, may it nourish us with the knowledge that we are surrounded by a deep and abundant love. Amen. When I was in kindergarten, more or less, my sister must have been in 2nd or 3rd grade, something like that, my parents went church shopping. Both of them, like some of you, maybe like many of you, had left the conservative traditions of their childhood, not wanting to be told that they had to believe things that clearly seemed untrue. But by the time my sister and I were young, they wanted us something, and the story goes, my mom tells me, she may be watching online right now. I hope I get this right, Mom. The story goes that her dear friend Sally Patrick, who had been in playgroup together with all the little ones, was teaching religious education at the Unitarian church in town. One of 2, actually, because we grew up out in New England where Unitarians are thick on the ground. Sally was teaching Sunday school, and my mom said, well, if Sally's teaching, it can't be that bad. And it wasn't, and clearly it stuck. Church shopping is maybe not the best word to use. You know, you're not going church to church looking for the best value for your money. There's not a UU Church of Boulder discount card yet. But shopping is not quite the right word, because being part of a church community, it's not a transaction. It's a relationship. It's a whole lot of relationships. But then again, as much as I don't like the consumerist, selfish, self-serving implications of shopping, it seems weird to say like church dating. How to shop for a church makes more sense than how to date churches. But shopping for church, I mean, it is about being in a relationship. And maybe the questions you might ask yourself early in a dating relationship are the same sort of questions to bring to a church community when you're trying it on for size. You ask things like, is the person you see on your first date, your first time, is that really who they are? Or have they just put on a face to behave in a certain way in that moment? You say, is this person I'm with, is this church I'm with, do they build me up or do they cut me down? Are they curious about me, or am I just a foil for a monologue? And you ask yourself over and over, whether it's with people that you're exploring relationship with or whether it's with church you're exploring relationship, you say, do I get to bring all of myself to this relationship? Or do they want me to leave some part of myself behind in order to conform? I asked a group of Unitarian ministers for suggestions and advice and red flags that you might give to a person looking for a new church home. And one colleague said, for me, the metric is always, does it seem like people in general feel empowered to show up as their full selves, as their messy, imperfect, marginalized selves, and receive care and support? And she said, then that question's followed real quick with, do I feel empowered to show up here as my full, messy, marginalized, imperfect self? She says, is a culture of welcome made explicit through words and actions, or does welcome rely entirely on subtext, on sort of wasp-flavored politeness and unspoken communication norms, which if broken or transgressed, put someone on the outside, which is a little bit of a spicy take, but is not wrong. When we talk about a culture of welcome, all of that is what we're talking about. Do I get to be me on Sunday morning? And do I make space for everyone else? So there's my first shopping tip for you all. Look for a community where you get to bring all of yourself just as you are. A community where hiding is not the price of admission. A minister friend told me the story of when his father visited the church that he was serving. This was my friend's dad, first time ever seeing him preach. He tells this story. He says, my dad came wearing his cowboy hat and his big belt buckle, not just his large belt buckle or you know what I mean, a buckle. And not one person talked to him during the service or at coffee hour. He said it was the least welcoming group of people he'd ever been with. I told the church about it the next time I was in the pulpit. And they asked me, why didn't you tell us who he was? And I asked them, why would that have mattered? When you're looking for a community to be part of, when you're looking for a community to create, where can you bring all yourself just as you are? Messy and imperfect, short and regardless of belt buckle size. And you can clean up nice. I'm not saying don't go get a haircut and put on a suit and come to church. I'm just saying, does the community welcome and embrace you when you don't? Do people think how you look is who you are? Yesterday afternoon, we gathered for the memorial service for Kendall Richards. Would have been her 55th birthday. And among the many, many stories shared, one friend and coworker said that Kendall took on a mom role for so many of us who felt sad and unloved. And she was always there to tell us she loved us. And if others didn't, that was on them, not us. She told us we were worthy and lovable. That's the spirit to look for. When you shop for a church, you ask, do they build me up or do they cut me down? Do they tell you there are good people and bad people and that you're bad until you get what they've got? Do they tell you some people are going to be tortured for eternity unless they follow that community's version of the rules? Is shame the way they motivate? Because all of that, friends, and we don't say this too often, but all of that stuff is junk theology. Run away from that. That kind of community takes our natural desire to want to do the right thing And it hijacks hope and turns it into fear, and it terrorizes your compassion and turns it into a threat against everyone who you love. Or maybe more subtly, the way to say it is, when you shop for a church, ask in that community, do some people count more than other people? Look for a community where the highest rank you can attain is regular human being, and everyone has already attained it. Do men count for more than women? Do some people get to choose what's right for them, and other people need their bodies and lives controlled? One old minister a century ago said, the purpose of church, the purpose of going is to become a person among persons. That is, to be a human being in a community which sees you and everyone there as human beings, messy, imperfect. Yes, of course, we are promise-making and promise-breaking and promise-remaking creatures. To be a person among persons. You've had, probably at some point, I've done this sometimes, a conversation where the other person did not need to be there. You know, like if you were replaced by a cardboard cutout and sort of slowly backed away, the transcript would not reflect any difference. That's not a virtue. That doesn't make for healthy relationships over time. So the question there is there mutuality in the people that I meet? Are they curious about me? Am I curious about them? That's what it is to be a person among persons. My experiences don't count more for yours. They certainly don't. Not just come up here in a robe and a microphone. All of us count. And I'm no higher rank than regular human being either. A curious community like that is also a changing community. So friends, look for a church where you don't have to be the same forever. And neither does anyone else. A church where every person is on a path of change, big, small, quick, slow. Are you living in a community or a museum? A friend said, here's a red flag. If you try to get involved with something, committee work, do people receive that with enthusiasm and invitation, or do they close ranks? If I mess up, do people talk about it directly with me, with kindness or compassion? Or it's a you should have known better, passive-aggressive sort of thing. I'm so struck. I was thinking about this today. Last spring, at one of our 9 a.m. services, we have them in the Sky Room. It's a little bit more informal, more singing. Just check it out sometime. I don't mean to put in an advertisement for the 9 a.m. service, but there it is. At one of those 9 a.m. services, would someone who is a relative newcomer to the community come over to the welcome table and station himself there? And not one person, as far as I know, came up and patted him on the shoulder and said, well, you know, Barb and Fred sit at the welcome table. You'll need to find somewhere else to go. Right? And they do, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and people didn't close ranks. They received it with enthusiasm and energy. And one delighted hug and handshake after another. It's beautiful. Like the trees out there, a living community is rooted in the past and growing towards the future. If you were to go to another church, you might get a very different set of recommendations on how to do church shopping. The questions I'm encouraging you to ask, these come from the values that we hold dear. These come from the values on the wall behind me here, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the interconnectedness of all life, justice and equity and compassion in how we relate, acceptance and encouragement to spiritual growth. These are our values expressed in our 7 principles. So, of course, I'm going to suggest church shopping questions that get at these. But those are the heart of it. Can you be who you are? Does your experience count? Do you need to leave some part of yourself behind? Do they cut me down or build me up? Do I feel better leaving than I did coming in, even if I don't always like it? Are they curious about me? And do I get to bring all of myself into this relationship? These questions, friends, are not just about how to look for a church, but how to create the church that people are looking for. And I am so honored and delighted to be beginning this adventure of my second year together with you, creating this community together. Amen.